Hello, everyone. This is Linda Westfall from the Software Excellence Academy, powered by the Westfall team. Our sponsor for our webinar series is the software division of ASQ. Pleased to welcome back one of my mentors, Tom Gilb. I've been learning from him for multiple decades now. Sorry, Tom. But he's going to be talking about quality 5.0.
Good. Okay. So these slides are, as usual with me, full of detailed content designed so you can, read them for yourself, study them, share them afterwards. So the QR and the links are there if you want them. Linda will be sharing them later. And I have a last slide that gives the QR code again, so you get them. Background: the the American Society for Quality, is it American or Association? Anyway, ASQ, published about 2019 a paper trying to improve the environment surrounding software quality, and it was paired with something called Industry 4.0, which is broader than, say, software. And well, it was 5 years ago. It was supposed to last about 10 years, so I'm a little bit jumping the gun. But reading it, I got tempted to come up with a suggestion for 5.0, the next generation of thought about software. So here we go. A little bit of fun before we start. I've been talking about these subjects for a long time. And here is from a paper I wrote in Datamation half a century ago, 1975, about the laws of unreliability. So we'll just take the first one for fun. Computers are unreliable, but humans are even more unreliable. And then here is a fishbone diagram for analyzing all 10 of my laws. We'll focus on this one. A system tends to grow in terms of complexity rather than of simplification until the resulting unreliability becomes intolerable. And then finally, the full paper. There's young Tom Gilb at about 35 years old without beard. And the last law I'll cite is that all real programs contain errors until proved otherwise, which is impossible. Okay, so I've been at this quality thing a long time, and it was just kind of fun to show that. By the way, back issues of Datamation are now available from 2019. I just discovered it at bitsavers.org if anybody wants to see how things were in the good old days 50 years ago. I was looking at LinkedIn and I found an advertisement for the Pacific Northwest Software Quality Conference. And I got in contact with the author that they had highlighted, and I had some issues with what he was talking about there. And he was generous enough to send me a preprint or copy of his talk, which I then, in excruciating detail, explained to him that he wasn't quite up to date on the history of quality, which was his main subject, actually. But he very great, and we had a talk as late as last night about these things. So he's young, and maybe if he's going to talk about the history of quality, maybe better talk to some of us old people. But like Linda too, yeah. Now, here's one of his statements. There may be various metrics we can track and monitor for this purpose. Quality assurance was his theme. But bugs are perhaps one of the most direct indicators of product quality. And I look at that and said, what? That's kind of narrow-minded. So I can think of some other things we can and do measure that are indicators of product quality. So just for fun, I asked my favorite AI system, Complexity, for 30 measures of software quality. Here they are with details, just to prove there were a heck of a lot of other known measures, published measures. So this was at best kind of narrow. And I'm hoping that by the time this person holds his paper a month from now in Oregon, he will have radically changed it. So I've given him a fair chance, and he seems open-minded. The quality conference, of course, has a statement there where we like to go deep into quality. And I am going to show you my version of going deep into quality, but this was not exactly deep into quality. That, bugs are it. Thank you very much. Quite recently, Jakob, who I subscribe to, had a meeting with the Werner Vogel, CTO of Amazon, and I picked up from his talk. He said these are the most important quality things, and he said security, never an add-on, bake it in from day zero. Now, security's got little to do with bugs, put it mildly. There's a relationship, but it's weak. Okay? He also said, his number 2 quality was maintainability. We're talking technical debt and all those problems here. And then he talks about design, which I'll get back to, but he said design for a 3rd quality called scale down. Wow, I've heard of scale up. I've even written some papers on it and published them, but I've never heard of scale down. That's interesting. I've got to figure that out. And then his last remark was one of my favorite subjects, called clarity. You'll find a paper at the very end called Clear Communication, or actually a book on it for free you can download. So here's just somebody, this guy's in the thick of it with the, Amazon Web Services, and his priority, he didn't mention bugs at all. Okay, he mentioned some other qualities. So I think that's a, more mature, up-to-date view of quality. Now, I then asked my friend Perplexity to give me the 20 most interesting measures of quality for quality assurance, quality control purposes. So there's the list there. I also asked it to suggest scales of measure, which is very basic to the idea of measuring and communicating anything clearly. I asked it to tell me what purposes in QA this particular measure has. I also asked it that if we didn't take this measure in and get feedback on it, what problems we could get. That's interesting. There's a whole lot of problems. By the way, these are backed up by papers, people explaining that they got these problems or got rid of them in relation to these. Okay. I also asked it to tell which stakeholders, like QA people, QC people, etc., were interested in supporting the measurement and design of things to make these better. So I'm just sort of teasing a little bit like, gee, you could only think of bugs as important. Well, this literature, which at least AI has access to if you don't, is very clear that there, and by the way, I asked for 20. I could have asked for 100, as we shall see, and gotten it. Okay, so it's far more than one. To further tease my friend, I said, give me 5 qualities very intimately related to quality control. So that's these. That's the scale of measure. That's a measuring instrument. Those are levels we aspire to. Those are stakeholders. And those are the detailed literature reference. And then I said, hey, give me 5 more for quality assurance. See, one mistake this gentleman made was he called his paper quality assurance something or other, but he almost 95% of the time talked about testing and QC. So I shared with him the official definitions of these two things. If he'd said, I'm mainly going to talk about QC with a little bit of QA, I would have accepted that, but I think he really didn't even have his definitions right. Here's a larger view of this. These are the 10 QA, QC qualities. And what I'm trying to show is my planning language, or planguage, which deals with quality, and show how we can organize any sets of qualities with interesting parameters like what is the scale of measure, what is the test process or meter, what's the minimum we need to achieve, what would be successful, who are the stakeholders involved, and what is the literature surrounding this, hopefully good literature, can be some bad literature. Okay, so I'm going to go through a total of 48 slides. I'm on 10 now, and it's about 1 per minute. I'll highlight ideas in the slide, and then I'll go on, and it's up to you to go back and study it in more depth. What is quality? Now, actually here, if we're going to the asq.org official glossary for quality, this is what we get. Quality, and I'm going to go through this in detail now, but this is the official position of ASQ on quality, and it's referred to in, I think, Watson's paper from 2019. Okay, now I'm going to assert that this definition is not clear enough and not good, not useful enough. Okay, now, kind of unkind of me to say any unkind words. I'm sure everybody's doing their best here, but I will explain in detail exactly why I feel that, and then I will come up with constructive suggestions. And I'm willing to work with anybody in ASQ, for example, Linda, in making this better for 5.0, which is, the future of quality. Now, I have a strange habit when dealing with terms and looking in the dictionary, no matter what anybody else says. So here's, my Mac app dictionary, and just highlighting it. Quality has something to do with excellence, and quality is a distinctive attribute. And the root of the word quality, as in, qualquier, is what kind. I think that was just interesting in itself. Now, in May, when I originally got a hold of this, I tried to, in one page, say what I thought was wrong with it, and I wrote all these words here. Don't worry, don't try to read them. I'm going to decompose them and go into more depth. But this is sort of, in one page, what do I think is wrong with it? It's all summarized here. Wrong with this definition. Holding a talk and having slides, I've divided those things up into about 10 different slides. So here's the first definition of many simultaneous definitions of quality. Quality is a subjective term for which each person or sector has its own definition. Now, no doubt this is true. You ask, 100 people what they think it means, you're going to get 100 subjective definitions. Although ASQ is trying to have an official definition, it would be nice if we agreed on the official definition of it. I don't think this is very helpful. Yes, anybody can have a subjective definition, but a society can have a nationwide view of quality, which they don't really have here, but they're trying to. And individual projects can have specific definitions of quality, as I've already shown you and will show you more of. So this is not very helpful as a starting definition. Here is more detail on it, but that's enough for the moment. Now, just for fun, I asked my friendly AI to give me 20 qualities of definitions of things like quality. And here they are, clear, concise, precise. Some people will be thinking of the SMART acronym. And just for fun, I asked myself, is it clear? No. Is it concise? No. Is it precise? No. Is it consistent? No. Is it measurable? Definitely not. And I concluded that the ASQ definition doesn't clearly subscribe to any of the qualities of a definition that may. So I would say that the definition contains at least 20 defects in relation to this standard for how definitions should be. Here it is again. Okay. Now let's take a look at it says, okay, there are two meanings in technical usage. Okay. And, the characteristics of a product or service that bear on its ability to satisfy stated or implied needs. Doesn't sound too bad on the surface of it. I don't have a big problem, except it's the official nationwide society definition. Then I get a problem. Now, it's got this word satisfy in there. Okay, bear on its ability. Look, if I have very bad security quality, like I only capture 80% of the hackers, 20% get in. Now that's a quality, but it's not a good enough quality system. So a quality is a quality, whether it's good or bad or indifferent. And that really isn't reflected here. In fact, they're missing a big idea that I'm going to talk about more, the idea of all qualities are scalar in nature, quantifiable, have degrees. They're not black and white. It doesn't, it's not like secure or not secure. It's not user-friendly or not user-friendly. And so this totally misses the boat there. It sort of says, well, you sort of got to satisfy. And we have lots of unsatisfactory qualities for the eternity of systems, and they're still qualities. So I would do something different. Okay, here's another little example down there. Okay, the third definition, or the second of the two technical meanings, is a product or service free of deficiencies. We're almost back to this oversimplified no bugs, or using bugs as a measure. I don't know. For example, let's say what do they mean by deficiencies? Does this mean bugs? They don't say so. And there are lots of other deficiencies. Okay, I don't know. Go back to the Gilb's laws showed you earlier, free of defects, etc. I don't think this is very helpful. Quality is a product or service. It isn't. Quality is a quality. It's not a product or service. And it's not a product or service free of. So this is like muddled terminology, to put it kindly. Now, our great hero, a man I met once and talked with about putting some of my methods in his quality control handbook, which he hardly agreed was a good idea. We won't. We were in Minnesota, his alma mater. He was born in Romania, Joseph Duran. Got a little quotation I'm going to get back to later, but let's do it right now. Without a standard, there is no logical basis for making a decision or taking action. Okay, so if you quantify qualities, you have made one sort of standard. If you classify, good definitions with 20 or 30 terms, you've made another standard, which I tried to measure the quality definition against. Okay. Anyway, Joseph Duran is quoted. I'm sure it's a correct quote, but I'm not sure it's his total intent. Quality means fitness for use. So bad quality, it means not fitness for use. But fitness is a very vague term. Does that cover absolutely all the 500 different kinds of qualities that AI systems know about? Or what does it mean? Is it usability for users to be fit? A bit vague. Now, I happen to have Duran's quality control handbook, about 1,500 pages. And as I say right here, it's a true engineering masterpiece, bit over the top for coders. It's really for very advanced engineers and not really for software engineers. I don't know. I think we need to go a bit deeper. Now, I'm going to show how to go deeper, and in very rough terms, defining scales of measure for quality is roughly what I mean here. So I would say that I'm not accusing Joseph Duran of being vague. He isn't. But this quotation is vague, ambiguous, and I find it not useful. And I think that's my main criteria. We need to get definitions that are far more useful than the ones we're looking at. By the way, you may or may not have noticed the cover of the book, these Egyptians sitting here, and there's the man landing on the moon. Okay, and I've been my friend has interested me in the quality assurance history. So here's one from 1450 BC, from Thebes, from a tomb. We have Egyptian quality controllers doing two different quality control methods on the pyramid blocks. That's cute. Number 8, according to Philip Crosby, and this is still the ASQ definition, it means conformance to requirements. I know that's a classical thing, and well, sounds good to begin with. I've also met and knew Philip Crosby. If you're as old as I am, you will have met all these people. I even knew Bing Crosby when I was 4 years old and lived next door to him, but that's another Crosby. Now, as conformance to requirements. Now, Elon Musk's first principle, and I have a little booklet on all of his methods called Musk's Methods. You can get it for free. Assume the requirements are wrong, even if I, Elon Musk, gave them to you. Assume they're wrong and tell me they're wrong. Criticize me, like I'm doing here. Friendly act, okay? Now, if the requirements are wrong, but you build the system to the wrong requirements and you conform to the wrong requirements, do you get quality that way? That sounds like a recipe for getting bad quality. This cannot be a fundamental definition of the idea of equality. It's an idea of conformance to a standard, but it's not an idea of quality or good quality or anything like that. Do you get my drift? Now, in addition to these analytical criticisms, really, of the current definitions, I felt there were some ideas that were severely missing from the whole thing that should be there when we talk about quality. So the idea here is simply stakeholder. Here's a free book on it from me. If you want to go deeply, as the Pacific Northwest Software Quality Conference tries to do, go deeply. I'm going to really deeply into stakeholder engineering, get my free book and go deeply. But stakeholders are, there's a stake, and there's somebody holding it, by the way. Stakeholders are the source of quality requirements. Got it? Now, if they are the source of quality requirements, then we should understand them more deeply, analyze them more deeply, find out about their quality requirements more thoroughly, not miss them so badly that the European Union fines us $500 million, Apple and Google, because they forgot a little quality like confidentiality of personal information or things like that. So, okay, so I believe we need to, that 5.0 has to embrace the idea of stakeholder analysis, and in particular, stakeholder quality analysis. And stakeholders are non-trivial. These are not just users and customers. These are far more, as we shall see. But so long story short, I find that stakeholder concept is totally missing, and many people are still locked into the user, the customer, the user, the customer. They never go anywhere else. Okay. Now, my next thing I find missing, and I've alluded to it before, is the idea that absolutely all qualities I've ever found, here's a list of some qualities, can be defined in terms of a scale of measure. Actually, there are normally many options here, many options, but there's no such thing as, there is no scale of measure for any quality I've ever heard of. And I've been dealing with this for 50 years and said this, and nobody has suggested they know about such a thing. If you think you know about a quality that cannot be quantified, ask your favorite AI system to give you scales of measure, like 10 of them, to show how ignorant you in fact are, and maybe enlighten you a little bit more. And by the way, it'll also suggest all kinds of measuring instruments for quality. No exceptions. So I think we need to, moving to quality 5.0, this is in fact adopting an engineering paradigm. We quantify our stuff, okay? And we manage it through quantification, measurement, and feedback. And we need to get the idea in there that, not just, bugs is the best way of doing it. Some people holding lectures at quality conferences this year have that mentality, that that's it, that's the only one, bugs. I showed you, okay? It's official. No, absolutely all the many qualities you might be interested in a system can be quantified and measured. And if you don't know how, your AI system does, and you are obsolete and out of a job if you can't even ask an AI for the answer and you deny that there are such things there. Here's an example for a European medical product organization, the 20 most useful qualities. Okay, I could have asked for 50 or 40, but that's it. And here's AI in 1 minute generating quantification. Just for fun, I also said rank them in order of the percentage of 100 different stakeholders for a medical system. And believe me, there are over 100 stakeholders for all medical systems. Nurses is just one, right? And so this one, safety, yes, 95 out of 100 stakeholders would be pleased if we delivered this goal level according to the scale of measuring that we did it there. And this is the minimum. And then down the bottom of the list, customer feedback, well, 5 out of 100 would be happy if you did that. So this gives us a clue as to which qualities we should prioritize and in agile incremental delivery, deliver first. I wouldn't suggest you did all of these simultaneously at the final level. That wouldn't be very agile, would it? Good. Now, Duran again. Now, I knew Duran, and I had for decades had his quality control handbook, but this year I bumped into a book I didn't even know he'd written. Maybe you didn't either. But in 1992, and I was publishing books before that and after that, so let's say Duran and I published on quality and design simultaneously. Anyway, I got a copy of the book. You can download free digital copies, and I read it very thoroughly. And actually, it's a great book. He is great. But let's focus on why I brought it up. Notice the title. The subject is quality by design. And this was also not mentioned in the ASQ definition. Maybe it's mentioned elsewhere, but I know that IT people often totally evade, ignore ideas of architecture and design. This is, they're sort of like, oh, that's waterfall stuff. We don't do that. We let design emerge magically from our coder committees. I don't know. But Duran is extremely clear. You get those qualities you want by designing them in. Everybody knows that who is an engineer or an architect or something like that. Now, software coders don't know that. They code. In fact, everything they code, every line of code is a little design, no doubt at all. But we're talking about design at a higher level, like design 10 different kinds of security. I've got a book on that called Resilience, if you look in the references, okay? So here are some books on quality design. All of these you'll find in the back in the references for free download. But Duran, as usual, he should be our hero, but we shouldn't misquote him or quote very isolated things. And I'm certainly, this is a very short quote, but I'm telling you the whole book is very clear and detailed on quantification, on multidimensional thinking, and on design. So I think it's a great book even today. And it's very clear that in 1992, Duran was trying to tell us, but we weren't listening, not in IT, that quality is designed in. And I suggest that 5.0 should be more explicit about this. It is an attribute that is designed in, whether you use the word architected in or designed in, or even say sometimes managers even design things, but they would call it strategic thinking or something like that.
Tom, I'm going to
Yes.
interrupt you. Please go back to slide 22.
Sure. Yes, I'm there.
Okay. This is from Andrew. I am amazed that AI found every item on slide 22 to have a different percentage, except the last two, that they'll all jump by 5% increments.
Right. Okay. Now, you can be amazed. I'm not at all surprised. Now, something you'll find out, I asked it to, without telling us, to find 100 medical system stakeholders and figure out which ones were, interested in these. Now, if you ask the AI system, you can feed this in, by the way, if you want to give its reasoning in detail, list the stakeholders, why they're interested in it. It will do it. Okay, so I can get the documentation, but I didn't ask for it and I don't have it. And so I can only guess. And my point was not that it's true, but it's an example of questions you can ask an AI system and get as detailed a justification as would satisfy you or not. That's the answer.
Thank you. It's just that, 5%, 5%, 5%, they may have rounded. The fact that there's...
Sure. For sure. There's no doubt this is rounded. Anybody can see that. I mean, it's not, it may be 4.68, but I did not ask for that accuracy and I don't care. Remember what we're using it for? We're using it for getting some idea of prioritization, right? And 5% is fine for the purpose of which one of these do we attack incrementally in building our systems. And in this sequence is suggested, and it's not a big deal. It doesn't have to be accurate. Okay, I could go much more deeply into that, but I think that's enough for the purposes of this talk. Andrew, if you want to talk to me by email, I'll be delighted to have a more extensive conversation with you.
Andrew says thanks.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay, so here I wanted a one-pager to show this idea of the process of designing quality into a system. So I said, give me some, really simple, just 4 different things, 4 by 4. In practice, I usually have 10 by 10s, but here, for example, is a stakeholder table. Here's my process of Evo, which there's a book called Evo in the back you can get for free. And here we say, well, who are our stakeholders, right? So the simple example there. And then the next question is, what values do they have? And some of these values are probably what we also would call qualities. Okay, content engagement, upload simplicity, all sounds like they're qualities. But sometimes we call them the values of the stakeholders, and sometimes we think about them as qualities. And so here are some qualities with scale of measure and goal and tolerable. We then move along and say, for these values, design me something that will get me to these goals, and those are called solutions. So here are 4 solutions. And then I have a thing called an impact estimation table where I can analyze the solutions versus the qualities and numerically how good they are and how credible the goodness is. Okay, these are all things I've invented. They're in all the books in the back there. And then finally, have maybe one solution which is really hot and has a very high number here. I decompose it. So I can, let's just say it would take 1 month to implement. I can say decompose it into weekly increments and deliver about 1/4 of the increment every week. Then I get a stream of early weekly increments of qualities being delivered measurably. Okay, this is the 1-page overview of the direction I think ASQ ought to go in. It's an engineering idea of how to deal with software quality. Okay, the 12th comment is that let's put it this way: if somebody says to me, "Oh, you've got 99% security," well, that doesn't mean anything whatsoever unless I know more about the system. Is it a government military system currently operational in Ukraine for drones? That 99% is a much more interesting number, right? So long story short here, you cannot evaluate quality levels and qualities in splendid isolation of all the other characteristics of the system, of all the designs in the system, of all the functionality in the system, and of all the resources. Okay, so multiple resources, multiple performance characteristics, multiple functions, and multiple designs are a necessary background for understanding the meaning of any one quality. Got it? If you don't get it, go get my free book, Competitive Engineering, and where this diagram comes from, and read yourself to a higher level of understanding of quality. But I think we need to, this is called looking at the totality of the system and not letting quality appear in splendid isolation. I'm very interested in the idea that we need to not just take one thing like bugs and say that's it. We need to keep on thinking of multiple stakeholders, multiple qualities, multiple designs, multiple steps for delivering quality. So I wrote a little paper recently called Multi, which I'd like you to read to get your mind in gear. And this is just an illustration from that paper where, for fun, I took a quality control thing called Spec QC, which is documented in the several of the books, but the competitive engineering book. And I decomposed it into 5 different levels. And each level and each component has its own quality characteristics. Wow. Is that complex? Well, no. It is a way of mapping and tracking complex systems so we understand them better. Long story short. Okay, let's see. There we go. Slide 27. Okay, should be able to do it. Now, turning from this analytical stuff, I hope I'm not insulting any people, but I am, in fact, criticizing the past levels of definition. And I know that ASQ wants to get better, and I'm trying to help. So here's my definition from the competitive engineering book 20 years ago, free download. Okay, so there's a systems engineering notion called performance, which is defined. And it includes all notions of qualities. Forget about the other stuff here, okay? Here is our notes going into more detail about that quality thing and its definition. But here's the actual definition. A quality is a scalar attribute reflecting how well a system functions. Short, sweet, to the point, right? Maybe not covering everything, but there's more detail here and there's more detail here. So the key idea is that it's how well. The function of a system is what the system does, okay? The resources are at what cost. The design is how have we designed it to be how well at a certain cost. Okay, these are all related, but the how well is in 2 words. That's quality, how well it does its function. That's all we really need. And anyway, 20 years ago, no reason to change it. So quality 4.0, here, there's things I haven't even talked about, which I really suggest it's time to move on. For example, there's a big focus on big data. Remember, before AI, big data was a big thing. And there's a big focus on statistical process control. Yeah, wonderful. I love Deming too. But it's a little bit too much focus on like the method for solving all the quality programs. And there's too much, but I suspect I know why. It's all about quality professionals who have, studied quality and taken the exam and gotten the certification. And I say, yeah, but actually I think that's too narrow and that hasn't been wildly successful. I believe, I'm going to say more about it in a moment, we need teams of people trained very well in their special discipline, okay? And I think Quality 4.0 is missing, we could start with the concept engineering, software engineering, systems level thinking, multidimensional quantified thinking, risk and uncertainty, self-adjusting quality. What the heck's that? Oh, well, classical effective principles. We'll show you some in a moment. Scale-free methods, incremental quality stream. I think, this is the agenda for how to make it powerful, useful, cost-effective, etc. So this slide's kind of difficult, but I have enlarged it. So here are some stakeholders on the team, end users, developers. You can read it. Here, for fun, I said, give me 3 critical values, 1, 2, 3, for each stakeholder, and explain why that value is critical to that stakeholder. I think that's very interesting, that you can organize information about qualities that way. And most people, including myself, could probably not generate this table manually in 1 minute like the AI system does. It has, much more background material in it, what it's been trained on, and it can, we can pull this out and then we can criticize it and change it and tailor it to our purposes. But, very few people can as quickly, as cheaply as AI generate overviews of things like this. Moving right along, quality 5.0, major statement here. The emphasis needs to be on the qualities themselves, not the people. People are important. Societies will train people, but we need to have a lot more focus on the qualities themselves, and we've done a very poor job even defining what the quality is. It's a bad start. We're going to train people on those bad definitions. I hope not, but I'm afraid. And we need, now this particular slide I've decomposed into 4 sub-slides. So the emphasis on qualities, in other words, things like this with scales of measure, multiple qualities. The second point, teams. And I had a little fun last night while I was going through the slides. I asked my friend AI for a given qualities to tell us what kind of specialist members for each quality and what kind of problems you get if you do not have the specialist members for each quality. I think that's a real, really interesting. And here, if you want to know how in the world did this stupid AI system manage to do this, you will find, if you click these things, some of the information it used, which could be good or bad information, but every time I've looked at it, it's a lot better than most human beings I know. It's qualified research or deep think, or it's, I haven't found junk papers on it. And the third idea that we need to use and quality control and learn it deeply, but we really need to shift. Even Taguchi years ago reminded us, he was the one who really pushed it, that we need to move upstream, meaning requirements and design and stakeholders, because that's where the quality problems start and that's where they're cured, right? And that means coders alone won't do the trick. And we have too many coders trying to run the world with their agile failed manifesto ideas, okay? And we've got to stand up, and quality is an engineering discipline, not a programmer or coding discipline. And the last point is that I think we need to use AI a lot better than we're using it to deal with multiple qualities, multiple stakeholders, making things measurable where people feel they can't do it. If you thought this was difficult before, it's really easy with AI to do a good job for your project. Now, got 6 minutes more because I'm going to stop like no matter what at 8. I hope I'm not pushing my luck too much. But so I summarize by what I call guiding principles. You will note with my Datamation article that I can write things that are good 50 years into the future. That's what I try to do with my principles. I hope I'm doing it here. I don't think I'll be around. I'm 84 now to find out whether my principles are good 50 years from now, but maybe some of you will. And so I've got 10 basic principles, and I'll go through them very quickly. Number 1, I believe that it's not about a quality like bug freeness being it and winning. I believe there are multiple qualities and multiple other considerations like resources and stakeholders. And I believe that what Fred Brooks pointed out in The Design of Design, that the purpose of architecture is to achieve a balance and harmony among competing concerns of the project. Okay, and by the way, Durand said that in his design book also. So the idea that ASQ should have is that quality is about finding a balance of good enough and reasonable quality for all the stakeholders at a, as Deming would say, at a price the user can afford to pay. Okay, in other words, not being fanatic, long story short. Okay, and sorry, did I skip to balance? Okay. The second principle is we need to introduce engineering as our fundamental tool for handling quality. And we need to, in fact, do software engineering, which has been talked about for decades and done very little about, but we can if we want to. And ASQ could lead the charge there. We need to think far more holistically about systems. There's too much code, as evidenced by the guy who thought bugs were it. And we need to think about, stakeholders and laws and designs and architecture and costs and changing circumstances and all that. We need to quantify. There's no other way of getting control of qualities for large, complex, critical systems like medical systems or aircraft control systems. We need far better teamwork, not just one person trained to do all the quality work, but a team of maybe 5 different specialties for each different quality. Okay, we need to do quality for the life cycle of the system, and we're still battling old COBOL programs from 50, 60 years ago, so that gives you some idea of what we're talking about. And we need to introduce ideas of architecture and design of quality much more explicitly than we have. We need to be much better at getting feedback about the qualities we are incrementally delivering, and quantification is, of course, key to that. We need to decentralize quality to all aspects, parts, and responsibilities in the organization. This is roughly related to the team idea. And finally, we need leadership. We need managers who are as fanatic as people like Elon Musk on the quality known as safety, or the quality known as cost of the automobile, or the quality known as reuse of the rocket ships. Okay, leaders like that make it happen because they're fanatic, and they understand that high competitive qualities turn into making you the richest man on earth, and a few other interesting things like that. There's a relationship there, and we need to remind ourselves, those who do quality well, like Apple and Tesla, get rich. And now I'm appealing to the American in you, where getting rich is more important than quality, but hopefully some of you think quality is more important than getting rich. Finally, last slide, half a minute. Here's Bent Flyvberg, a Dane at Oxford, who's got 16,000 projects database, and he's very explicit. The ultimate reason for doing projects is their benefits. Read the word qualities here. Most projects don't even measure benefits. Read qualities. Project managers who do measure and manage benefits perform better. What can I say? That's all, folks. End on time.
Thank you very much, Tom. I have one additional question so far. Oh, no, I've got several actually now. Sabrina says, quality cannot be achieved in isolation work. It must be cross-functional.
I agree, Sabina, and I hope I've made that point explicitly about, multiple people, all the people, systems thinking. Isolating it kills it right away. Agree completely.
Yeah, that's the team concept you were talking about.
Among others, the systems concept, I would add, is part of that. You've got to take everything in consideration that impacts the quality.
Yeah, that's one of the lean principles, is you've got to look at the whole system.
Good, yes.
And in fact, when you talk safety, you've got to be talking the whole system, because software doesn't hurt you. Yep. Heavy objects hurt you, chemicals hurt you, that kind of thing. But software can lead or be one of the intermediate steps that take you to bad consequences. So it has to be system thinking. So totally agree. Andrew says, thank you for the amazing information, detailed and source in your presentation, Tom.
Thank you, Andrew. And to you and anybody else who feels they want more, I'm retired. My email is tom@gilb.com. I love to talk to people and argue a little bit. So feel free.
Yeah, I do want to say that if you expand and look at, for example, the certified software quality engineer, one of the sections which tweaks to what you were talking about is designing qualities in. And
Good. Yes.
so they,
Linda,
ASQ does.
Linda, would you send me more information on that? Because I haven't reviewed it and I'd like to.
Okay, I'll send you the body of knowledge.
Thank you. Good.
Sorry, James asked, is there a slide in this presentation that provides the references that you've mentioned in the presentation?
Yes. Very many of the, it says sources. Very many of there are two classes of references. One, in square brackets, I have references to my books and papers and other people's papers. I forgot to say, at the end of the slides, you will find 6 pages of detailed references.
Yeah,
So
spend the rest of your life reading stuff.
Yes, and in addition, you of course saw the URLs, the live URLs that Perplexity provided me with on many of the slides, and they're live links. You can click them on the slides, or at least cut and copy and paste them.
So when
if you have any problems finding anything, email me. I'll help you out. But do look at the end of the slides, all the references.
Yeah, Dan Campo's asking the same thing. Tom mentioned all these resources that are available. Where are these available? The books and to read.
At the end of the slides.
At the end of the slides.
I'm sorry, folks, I referred to them, but I didn't actually show them. My apologies.
Not a problem. Folks, when the recording gets edited in about a week or so, the recording will be posted, but so will all the slides. And that's where you'll find the references. You can download the PDF of those slides, and it will include the references. He just didn't bother to show you those slides. Got a bunch of thank yous here. Yes, you'll be able to get the slides again, when the webinar recording is posted, the slides will also be posted. And we got a whole bunch of thank you type messages, Tom. I really appreciate you talking to us today. I thought this was I learned stuff. So I always feel, after being in the industry for almost 50 years, if I'm learning things from presentations, they're pretty good presentations.
I feel the same way, Linda.
If I can take gems away, I'm always pleased. So thank you very much for your presentation today. And again, lots of very informative and detailed thank you very much type messages coming in. And with that, we will end the webinar for today. And I hope to see you next week when we talk about the new normal, working with a world full of virtual teams and the virtual world. So thank you all very much for your kind attention today. And Tom, thank you all very much for the excellent presentation.
Thanks very much for sponsoring it.
Thank you. We'll see you soon.
Bye-bye. See you soon.